Welcome to another episode of When We're Not Hustling After Party. I am the very lucky producer of this of that podcast, and then a co-host of this awesome show. Don't forget to like us, subscribe to us, leave us comments, and here are my co-hosts.
I'm Jessie Sage. I am the host of When We're Not Hustling, and this is Milk.
I am Melissa Milk, and I am a kink practitioner and shibari teacher in the Pittsburgh area.
Perfect. We're talking today about Ava Adore. Ava Adore is a Chicago-based full-service sex worker who spends 6 weeks out of the year every year in the desert in Nevada at Burning Man. So
I love that.
PJ is a burner, or was a burner before we met. And I have a funny story about this. So PJ and I met on for those of you who don't know, my life partner, PJ and I met on OkCupid back in the day, where OkCupid actually had wasn't tenderized yet, and had actual questions, and they would match you based on your politics and your interests, and they kind of do that now, but it's all swiping, so
It
it's
used to be
different.
better.
It used to be better. I feel
Yeah.
like an old person, but back in the day when OkCupid was good, I met PJ on OkCupid, and PJ at the time was a burner, and all of their pictures were festival pictures, and they were wearing in their main profile picture, they were wearing a green spandex suit from head to toe, and in other ones they had chainmail loincloths and stuff on, wild stuff. I was 36. I was leaving a divorce to a very conservative, he's not politically conservative, but very traditional person. I had 2 children. PJ was not who I was looking for. And yet, because I was and yet every time I opened, because it wasn't an app yet, it was you logged on to the computer. Every single time I logged on, PJ was 99% match on the top of my page. So I couldn't see anyone else until I saw PJ. And I was like, why is this person in this green suit? Always spandex, bright green spandex from head to toe. So,
oh my goodness. So slightly different than your last partner.
Yes, my last partner is an anesthesiologist. And so I was like, I don't know why. And so for a month or so, I ignored this because I was like, I don't know why OkCupid thinks I need to talk to this festival goer who's wearing a chainmail loincloth in these pictures, hanging around the woods. And then at one point I was just I actually wrote to PJ and I was like, apparently OkCupid thinks that we have to talk because you are on my page every day. And we went on one date and it's been 10 years. They were right. PJ is the love of my life. But but here's another funny story. So I didn't know anything about LARPing either. And they're a LARPer. They were a LARPer. I only say all of this in past tense because I don't know, we got busy with life and kids. And so they don't go to Burning Man anymore, but maybe someday will. But there used to be this OkCupid thing that said, the most embarrassing thing that you would admit. And PJ wrote on there that they're a LARPer. And I didn't know what that was because I have no context for any of this stuff.
I love that.
And so I just looked past it. I was like, okay, whatever. And then we've been dating for 3 or 4 months. And then all of a sudden they start talking about sword fighting with foam swords. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And they're like, I put that in my thing to deter people who would be judgy about it. And I was like, I can't even be judgy about this. I don't even know what it is. I have no idea what you're talking
about. First of all, I love hearing about the outfits because I've pretty much only ever seen PJ in a black t-shirt and a black pair of jeans. So
yeah, that's the uniform now.
I
will have to get them to dig up pictures and send them to you because there's something.
Would love to see those because obviously in the kink scene we wear the wildest shit. So I really, really, really need to see those pictures. And I'm really surprised. Those are not things that I would have assumed about PJ, but cool. Yeah. I also dated a burner once. There's lots of burners in the kink scene too.
Yeah, and in the poly world, all of these things kind of overlap. Yeah.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
also have a friend who is in the SCA, which is the Society for Creative Anachronism, and it's like they LARP. Like they
Yeah.
have competitions. They're like, it's funny because like he takes rope lessons from me here and there, and like we've all come up like in the Pittsburgh rope scene a little bit, but like I'll be like, I'm doing this thing or teaching this class, and he'll be like, I'm busy because I run this group, and I'll be like, okay, well, whenever you want to learn rope, you can get in touch with me.
Whenever you get back with some
Yeah.
level of seriousness.
Yeah, burners and LARPers tend to be busy people.
Yeah.
Okay, LARPing, I totally would have done if I had the money for any of the stuff. I was always such a broke kid. And by the time I had money, the time had passed.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But Burning Man it's camping, man. I
That's the
had to
problem
camp
for
as a
me.
kid, and I'll glamp, like
Yeah.
I'll glamp
Mm-hmm.
and I'll go do a night of camping. I like being out. I grew up camping, so there's still a big part of me that I was on my windows open even when it's 20 degrees. I like to hear the
Mm-hmm.
world, I wouldn't
Mm-hmm.
mind waking up on the ground once on my nice soft air mattress that I carried out there. But Burning Man was always like, yeah, that's where all my people are, but I can't spend money to camp ever again in my life. And I
Are you a
know I don't have the
camper,
money to
Milk?
glamp at Burning Man.
Do you do camping, Milk?
I love to camp.
You
I
really
know
do?
I've probably like
It's
my hair is a little bit shorter now, but like if you've seen pictures of me in the past, like I seem like a very femme person. I love makeup and all those things, and like could be perceived as very high maintenance, but I love camping, and I will bring all my makeup camping with me,
Yeah.
which
Mm-hmm.
is like what I Burning Man intrigues me greatly, and this episode was fun to listen to because it was like it talked about more accessibility at Burning Man, and
Mm-hmm.
usually when you hear people talking about Burning Man, it's like the people who like have really good jobs and can afford shit,
Yeah.
right.
and so like it was cool to hear about it from someone else's perspective,
Right.
even though they do sex work and they can afford it. They're like,
Yeah.
I found it through a completely different route, and I
Right.
know
Yeah.
that it could be accessible if it's something that you really want to do and you
Mm-hmm.
don't have these things. So like, but I love to camp. I just like, especially like doing kink outside. So like doing cathartic
Mm,
activities where you're like, and like you're in the grass, like
Mm-hmm.
is
right.
great. I will say we go a little hard though. Like we lean in a little bit towards glamping. Like we have a queen size cot that like fits me and Lauren on it.
Right.
We put like a Japanese futon
Yes.
on top of it.
Mm.
I like
Yes.
bring all my
See, I'm
makeup.
into this.
We
Yeah.
set
Yes.
up
Yeah.
we set up a full kitchen. I have like a double wide pop up tent that we like hang out underneath of.
Yeah.
I bring a rig so that we can do suspensions in the middle of a
Okay. So
field.
you know how to do it, though.
Yeah, we have
Okay.
solar panels
Yeah.
and batteries for things.
Okay,
Like
see all of this, like, yes, I'm into a mobile home essentially, a
yeah,
mobile home space that I rebuild other places. But I need to be clear because sometimes when you say camping, some people mean what is the least amount that I can fit into this rucksack and how can I eat bark while sleeping on the ground? And I was incredibly poor growing up, and I have done these things. And yes, you can survive that way, and I will not survive that way anymore. That's my boundary.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But as soon as you said Japanese futon, you had me. I'm like, yes, okay, you get it. Yes.
I will go
I like
harder
camping where
and
you
rough
bring
it a little
butter.
bit, but like if I'm roughing it, it has to be in exchange for like a reward that is like either like a serious experience or
Yeah.
like you're going to go to this specific place and see this thing that you would never see anywhere else. Like if you
Right.
want me to sleep on the ground not inside of a tent, there better be something happening.
Yeah. I
Okay.
can't
So
imagine anything myself, but sure, maybe.
my barrier is that I'm very into food. And
Mm,
if I'm going to go like spend a couple days away from my house, I want there to be good food. And if there's not good food,
yes.
I'm a little
You should then you should
cranky
go
about
camping with Lauren because Lauren likes to prep for camping, and we do things like we make like broccoli salad and like bring like things for cheese boards and like you know, gourmet snacks that you can cook over an open fire. Like
Yeah,
we're
see,
also
this
like
is
we
Yeah.
travel for
Yeah.
like even when we're just normally traveling, we're almost always like looking up a place where we can go have a specific food experience. We're
Nice.
yeah,
traveling for a food experience, so like
yeah.
even when we're camping, like food is really important. I'm like, these cheeks don't come from nowhere. Like I need
See, every time I talk to you, I get this impression that like I'm very much like your partner and you are fairly like PJ. Like, we're just living out the same relationship.
yes, yes. Common threads.
Yeah. No, yeah, I want to have like a good food experience. Although I have to say that one of the best experiences, like that was really meaningful to me, was when PJ and I, it was the first year we were together. We went to a regional burn and it was in Delaware. And it was, thing is, I'm so conflicted about this because it was very muddy and the mud, like the squishy mud, is just gross to me. But like the experience was amazing. And I was also like newly in love. So it had that like that kind of energy to it too. But PJ and I did Molly and mushrooms together. And then we went to the big fire like at the end. And I remember, and I was in the middle of this like very messy, terrible divorce. And I sat in a chair and I'll like never forget this. And the fire was going and I just started crying like so many tears. And PJ was standing behind me, like just like grounding me, like touching my shoulders and touching my head. And then people came up to us. And I don't remember everything that happened, but I remember PJ saying, she's going through a lot right now. She's fine. And feeling like very cared for in that moment. And then going back to the tent and having like great sex and then waking up and feeling like a different person. An amazing experience. But
Nice.
yeah. So I did like that. But then I'm like, would I do it again? I don't know. Do I want to walk in mud? I don't know. Couldn't I just do mushroom and Molly like in my backyard? I don't have a backyard, but like do I have to walk through the mud for that? I don't know.
I feel like
Was the
burners are
mud the part that was transformative? I don't know.
yeah, burners are really good at building events that like that build that like sort of
Mhm.
swell in a way that like
Yeah.
give you even if you're like not tripping but like trip because that's cool
Yeah.
but like get build in a way that like can lead you to something that's transformative or like gives you
Yeah.
release and
Mhm.
like I'm also like that could be a lot if you do it like I don't know if I could be a burner because like I don't know if I could go to something every week that like renews my outlook on life. Like I need a certain amount of routine and steadiness.
Yeah.
But like it's really great when you do need it. Like a
Right.
sense of like
Mhm.
oneness and community and
Yeah.
like the transformative nature of fire is like I get the obsession with
Yeah.
fire definitely.
hmm hmm Yeah. And I think that there was like, it was that like culmination of like the drugs and the person that I'm newly in love with and the fire and the environment and the like energy of all of those things together that was like, I don't know, was like a really amazing experience.
Yeah.
Um, But, you know, and I actually like in my head, like love the ethos of Burning Man, where like there's everybody has to help and everyone has to participate. And you can't, although I've heard that that's kind of changed with all of the tech people coming in and buying their way out of like helping and creating and kind of siloing themselves off. But like at its origin, I think there was like a real ethos of like, if you come, you also work, like everybody participates in this. It's not, you don't consume it, you produce it. And like this like shift away from like consumption to like production and community, I think is really neat. Although like me as like a mom of three kids who's always had like three or four jobs at the same time, I'm like, do I want to go someplace and work? I don't, maybe like lounge, you know? So I
Right.
have like an internal conflict about that too.
Yeah, I feel like when I was originally introduced to the concept of Burning Man, it was through a partner we were planning on going, we didn't end up going, I would still definitely go at some point. But
Mhm.
the sand scares me a little, but that's about it. But
Yeah.
just the thought of like, so like thinking of you and the roles that you just described, usually like adding on the like the job of mother to that, or like
Mhm.
of partner, you know, like of like someone who is female, who is
Yeah.
partnered to like
Mhm.
male people, you tend to take on more,
Right. Mhm.
like more than your share of things.
Right.
So
Right.
like I find like when I'm in an environment that is like sort of like Burning Man style, or in like the
Mhm.
kink community where we're all working to do something, it is kind of a break, because like it's really affirming to like work on something where like other people are doing just as much, if not more than you.
Mm. Mhm. Mhm.
And you're not like, I have to jump in and take over and do everything to make
Right.
sure it gets done.
Right. Because I do think
Nice.
I feel that way. Like I have to take over all the things that I am involved in or they don't get done. And so that idea of like, oh, I'm going to go someplace and it's going to be a whole bunch of work. I'm like, I'm not signing up for that. Like, I already have a whole bunch of work. I already have too much work than I could possibly do. So yeah, but I really I really appreciate that perspective that like this is a community that is set on redistributing the labor in a way that's more egalitarian.
Yeah. Like any man
Nice.
who walks into camp is gonna have to do just as much as you do to
Yeah,
get to the point where like you're all not working and you're just enjoying
right.
yourselves.
Yeah, yeah,
I like that.
yeah. I
Mhm.
like that too. Um, I think it'll get like, yeah, I think it'll get easier for me. I feel like there was a period of time up until relatively recently that I was managing three kids. And now my two older ones grew up and I'm managing one kid. And that is it's different.
Yeah. Yeah. We evolve, things change.
Yeah.
But like it's also like, so learning about things through your podcast about like Burning Man and the concepts of Burning Man, it like, I don't know, I feel like it introduces you to like, well, maybe it could, if I wanted
Yeah.
things to be more like this or different, like that
Yeah.
dynamic exists somewhere. So like I
Yeah.
could apply some of
Yeah.
this to my life if I wanted to, or like
Right.
go and experience it, so that like, and maybe if I did go and experience it, it would change my perspective in a way where I would come back to what I'm doing and like
Mm-hmm.
handle it in a different way.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. Right. And I mean, that's kind of what we've been talking about through all of these like episodes is handling and thinking about things in a new way and what that could bring to
Yeah.
us,
Yeah.
what that can do for us.
And
Yeah.
how do we get these transformative experiences to change us and add to our
Mhm.
experiences of everything else? You know, how do we come back with that?
Yeah.
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 I also have to say, like about Ava, I love to know that people, like everyone that we talk to is kind of doing this, but I love to know that there are people in the world who just like live according to their own rules. And I was like, I'm just gonna go do this every year for 6 weeks. I mean, it's a long time
Yeah.
to devote to something that you just want to be a part of. And I think that's amazing.
I
Yeah.
like
I like it.
hearing about how sex work is allowing people to
Hmm.
pursue
Yeah.
these things with like freedom
Right.
and the flexibility that it gives them. It's like really a very eye-opening perspective of like, because
Hmm.
like you only, again, like we talked about in previous episodes, like you hear about something from a place of where like people are trying to take away your trust in it, and you
Yeah.
don't know and you
Right.
don't have perspective, and then
Right.
like to hear like there's so many people who do sex work, and it's like, so
Hmm.
there's people who do work that is sex work that don't even know it's sex work, like,
Yeah.
and like
Like
how that,
bartending. I don't know.
yeah,
I'm
affords
just
them opportunities in their life to like
right.
do the things they want to do is really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. That was so Emily and
Absolutely.
I were working before Emily and I created the show together, and we spent a lot of time thinking about framing and like how to frame it, because I didn't want a show that was specifically about sex work, because I've done shows like that and there are many of them. But I also didn't want to I'm not trying to say like, let's bracket out sex work and talk about all of the
Right.
other things, but how could we like think about things that take sex work seriously, but that also shows like the fullness of the people who are doing the work. And it feels like, this concept of the show came out, but when we spent a couple months talking about what we wanted to create. And we very much had this idea that like we should think about what sex work allows us to do, and like what sex allows, who it allows us to be, what it allows us to do, and
Yeah.
who it allows us to be. And it turns out that's such fertile ground. It's so many things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You're really hitting the nail on the head, because it's like also like having the podcast be every week shows also that like there is an abundance of people who do sex work. Like it is not a small thing.
Yeah.
It is like ever present in our society. And then just also like how each episode always has these like little links to like what people have said previously, and like these interconnecting like thought processes or like epiphanies it's very natural. It's like, oh wow, like this just reaffirms like these narratives that are like, it's funny, like you didn't even know that you had these misconceptions in their head. They're so easily broken by this like, oh, this correlates with this. And
yeah. That's why, going back to Chloe Nova talking about hitchhiking in a previous episode, it was so interesting to hear her say, like, what we're talking about is like controlling what people can do with their bodies, like where their bodies are in space, and all of these like lives that we're intersecting with in this like show is about people who've decided not to have their bodies policed like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the notion and the narrative that we have that sex work is usually forced on someone. And
right.
like this is so obviously not that. And the like people are celebrating their sex work and the freedom that it gives them and the opportunities that have come to them because of it. And that's really cool.
Yeah. I'm thinking back, and Pucks Aplenty we had on the show earlier, several episodes ago. They didn't talk about this on the show, but I've interviewed them for other things, and they've told me that they do dominatrix work, or how did they call it? Theminatrix? I can't remember exactly what they said, but like it was a good term. But they've decided at this point in their life that they're only working with queer folks. Like they only work with queer folks, and they've gotten to a point in their career, especially since most of the money that they're making comes out of burlesque and producing events and things like that, that they're like, I want to give queer people this experience, and I'm kind of tired of like cis white hetero men, and I don't want to do that, so I'm not going to do that. And I think that like that is also like a testament to like, not only do people often decide to go into sex work, but at some point a lot of people also decide like, what do they want sex work to look like? Who do they want to cater to, and what sort of experiences do they want to give, and or to provide, but also just to who do they want, and
who gets to get them.
And I think that that's really powerful.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah,
it's like
I would
some bodily autonomy squared. I like it.
Yeah.
It is. It's funny to think about like how it is when you're in a position of service in sex or in kink, any of these practices, like giving them to people. It is really often that the people who are like centered in receiving are cis males. And like building up some of my practice, I have focused pretty specifically on queer people, because like I feel like queer people often think of themselves as the one who are having to do sex work instead of like getting to receive these kind of cathartic practices. And it's like, no, it's for us too. Like we should get to, you know, if we want to cater an experience to our specific desires, needs, fantasies, then we should be able to opt in and do that.
Right. Well, it's so funny that you say that, because like when we did that, when Emily and I did the after party after your episode, and Emily was asking me why I liked being like tied up by you, I like eventually came to that. Like as I was spinning, like, I don't know, why did I like it? And then I was like, it's because somebody else did something for me. Like,
for
you know,
you.
and that felt really, powerful to me. Like, I didn't create this, which I'm used to doing. Like, I'm used to figuring out what else somebody else wants and creating that for them. And I was like, I didn't have to do that. Somebody else did that. And that felt really, as somebody who's usually a service provider, to have somebody else take that role for you, is really like special, actually. And I think that, So
I mean, so like the Burning Man tenet of like, it's all about bartering, giving and receiving instead of using any money. And like, there is what you're saying about your experience getting tied up. It affirms for me that like, there's just as much power in the giving as there is in the like receiving, or there's just as much power in the receiving as there is in the giving. Like, we think of the people in power in a dynamic as the ones who are like giving or like implementing the practice onto another body, but like there's a lot of power also in receiving a practice from someone else. And like, you can really flip those dynamics on their head and do whatever you want with them.
Right. Yeah. Cause I in no way mean to suggest that like, I don't like also like providing those things. Like, I often feel very blessed in my work to be able to like create something for somebody else that gives them something that they really need, that they need in like a core level. And when I can do that, and when I can like really connect with someone, it feels like a privilege to be like let in like that. So, but flipping it and allowing somebody else to do that also feels like it. Like, it's the giving and receiving, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. And gives you like a little bit of perspective on like how your clients, like how brave your clients are for like letting someone do that for them.
Yeah. Because it's actually hard to ask for what you want. And it's hard to be vulnerable. And there's a lot of like rhetoric that I feel is very, very wrong about like who clients are. I mean, obviously there's bad clients, like that's just true. But like, but it's not true that everyone who's a client is like selfish or exploitative or all of the things. Like, often when I remember talking to a liberal feminist, and I do not have a lot of love for liberal feminists. Um, and I remember saying to her, she ran like a women and girls organization, and I said something about sex worker rights, and she's like, or decriminalization or something. And her response right away was, "Oh, for God's sakes, leave the women alone and just lock up the Johns." And I was like, wait, no, that's not what I want.
Yeah.
Like, you want to criminalize my entire client
just out of
base
curiosity. So women aren't allowed to hire sex workers now? Can we just start there? You're a feminist.
Right. But that whole thing, that whole idea that like all we're doing is catering to these like terrible people, doesn't take into consideration like that you are doing something brave when you're like reaching out to somebody and saying like what it is that you want and need, and that's not an easy thing to do.
Yeah. And to like place the appropriate value on that exchange.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And to recognize it as it's like Milk, you and I were talking the other day in a private conversation about about placing like the appropriate value on things, and how usually it's the people who are like, yes, I will give you 300, 500, whatever amount of money it is for this experience, because I think it's really important, are often like very grateful for that in the way that people who are paying $5 for something like just aren't.
Yeah. And how usually have a much more like liberated perspective than most people.
Yeah.
And the type of it drives me crazy, the type of feminism that is like the way that we empower women is through the subjugation of men. Like that's not how
Yeah.
That's not
that
how it
isn't
works.
how we change the world and its
Mhm.
power dynamics in a way that benefits anyone. Like we give women power and we allow men to be soft and
Yeah.
open.
Yeah.
Like
Mhm.
it's not
Yeah.
about
We let
subjugation.
everybody have power and softness, right? Like we move
Yeah.
towards a world where everyone's allowed to just be like, you don't need to know what parts I was born with to know that I'm a human that
Mhm.
likes to be hugged and cook in the kitchen sometimes, and also tell people what to do
Yeah.
and bark orders.
Mhm.
Like all of those things are things that I like to do, and you
Yeah.
don't need to know anything about my body to know that those are things I like to do.
Yeah.
I'm a person.
Yeah.
Like as long as I do these
Yeah.
things with consent from the other party,
Yes, like
perfectly good and
it's
fine
all
and how it should
good.
be.
And
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
doesn't negate
And that that
like
kind of
your identity
feminism,
or ego.
yeah, I feel
I
like that
want
that kind of
those.
feminism also like it just reinforces that dynamic of like men will not give away power if they fear that they will be subjugated. So like
Mhm.
how do you change
Yeah.
anything?
Right.
Like
Yeah.
don't by
What are you
being like
doing?
I'm just going to put you to where like I'm going to put you through what you put me through. Like nah.
Yes, it feels exactly like that. It's
Yeah.
like, well,
Right.
you're just trying to win the game. You're not even trying to win the game. You're just trying to make it so that they get punished the way you
Yeah.
felt
Yeah.
you were punished. That's all
Mhm.
this is. This
Yeah.
isn't this
Yeah, and
isn't
that's
helpful.
like the Burning Man thing is like how about we all do this together? Like how
Yeah.
about
Yeah,
like
How
yeah.
about we
actually
create a world?
together.
Because like actually what they're doing is world building,
Yeah.
Yeah,
and I think this like this notion of like building the world from the ground up, like we can look at that and think like, if you're going to create a world from the ground up, like what rules do you want there to be? Like, how do you want people to participate in this world? Like, what is that going to look like? And I think we can look to the ideals. I mean, obviously there's like we have our ideals, and then we're messy people in practice who it doesn't always work out how we want. But like it's still worthwhile to dream, and to dream about like
yeah,
what is it that what if we're to build a world for 2 weeks in the desert, what is that going to look like? And how are we going to relate to each other? And there's something really like magical about that, I think.
Yeah. One of the book that I mentioned when I was on the
Mhm.
podcast, which was The How, actually brought me back to a place where like it talks about using your imagination as an
Mhm.
adult to
mm,
think of scenarios where like things go exactly how you would want them to go. And even
Mhm.
if that doesn't
right.
happen, like how important it is to dream and imagine the
Yeah.
things that you want to see in order to even get anywhere near them.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Right. Like have a clear
absolutely.
vision, like know what it is that you want. I remember my therapist earlier in my career telling me when I was like, I don't know, like it's hard when you just start something to know like what direction you want to go in and what you want to put your time and energy into, especially in something as like vast as sex work where it could go in a million different directions. Like I spent a lot of time in my early career trying so many things and seeing like what stuck. I'm going to try camming. I'm going to try this. I'm going to try this. I'm going to have OnlyFans. I'm going to do this until I like got to like escorting is really what I like doing. Like it felt better to me, but it took me a long time to get there and to like be brave enough to go into like the in-person world. But I remember my therapist saying, when I was like, and even just with writing, like, I don't know what I need to be focusing on. And she was like, you need a Jessie Sage artist statement. And like, I loved that she thought about it as an artist statement. Like, this is like, who do, what is the, who do you want to be in this? You know, like you're creating a
Yeah.
career, but you're also creating yourself into that. Like so you should know what you want it to be, you know, and that was really helpful. And I never sat down and like actually wrote like a statement, but that was like in my head for so long of like, okay, so if I'm crafting something, what is it that I'm crafting? I need to have an idea of
Right.
what that would be.
I
Yeah.
really like that. I think
Yeah.
that's a good
We all
place
need
to
we
wrap
all
this
need
up.
artist statements, I
Yeah,
think.
we need our own artist statement.
Yeah.
What is your
Like,
personal or your personal statement,
Yeah.
to the world?
yeah, even
Like,
if it's
what are your
just,
tenets?
up here, like, what do you
Mhm.
Yeah,
imagine? What do you imagine for yourself? And
absolutely.
carry with you the flexibility to let that change.
Yeah. Right.
Yes,
Yeah.
especially that. That's number one on Emily's. Number one on Emily's artist statement is we reserve the right to change everything all the time.
Right. Number one rule, everything might be different when you get there.
Everything entirely. I
Yeah.
love that so much.
Mhm.
This is the one you're not when we are not
Wait, hold on just
hustling.
1 second. I want
Ah,
to give Milk a chance to plug you're doing your first class at your house or at your studio. Do you want to plug that real quick for future ones?
Yeah, so in an hour, I will be hosting my first boutique workshop in my home studio, and we will have information up soon. You could find it on any and all of my social medias about like how you could possibly book to take lessons or have experiences or sessions. We'll be doing like individual one-on-ones. You could do like a studio takeover where you could bring a group and have your friends.
Ooh, that's cool.
I'm hoping that it's well received.
Yeah. Okay. So what are your socials though?
My socials, all of my socials are under Milk Glass, usually with one S. You can also look up Melissa Milk. And if you're looking for anything that has to do with me and my partner, we go by Milk and Ash.
Perfect. Okay. I
nice.
wanted to make sure you did that. Okay. So Emily, you can wrap us up.
Uh, this is the One We're Not Hustling after party. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave us some comments.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay.